A 19-year-old gets into her car early. She takes off down the road, and just after leaving her home, she spots a body in the road, halfway undressed and in a pool of panicked. She rushes home, gets her parent, who return and calls
911. What's your emergency?
The body in the road, almost nude. But why was she dead in the road? Who had killed her, and why? Hello, are you pessimists? Welcome. If you are new, if you are returning, welcome back. I'm glad you have joined me today. I am pretty pessimistic. I like to discuss crime, conspiracy, and all of the things that give existential dread. So today we are discussing the strange death of Kitty Cat West.
The partially dressed body of a woman was found outside of her home in an Alabama suburb. She'd suffered a head injury.
Kathleen "Cat" Martin was a fun-loving life of the party. She was beautiful, blonde, and loved to imitate Marilyn Monroe, according to her friend. She internally did depression. Until at a Super Bowl party in 2004, Cat met Jeff West. Perfect for Cat. He was nice, kind, he seemed perfect. Jeff, a U.S. Army vet who was working as a recruiter at the time. Cat, gorgeous, like I said, blonde, and the life of the party. Jeff wasn't. He was calm, cool, collected. Their friends thought it was crazy that such opposite would attract. As time went on, they lived their life, moving multiple times, settling in the suburb of Calera, Alabama. And in Calera, people were conservative. But guess who wasn't? That would be Cat. The couple at this point had a daughter, so Cat stayed at home while Jeff worked as a security guard. Everything seemed perfect, but was it? On social media, family and friends saw the perfect life, happy marriage, all the above. But Cat was hiding a big secret. She was into some really different kind of stuff, and she didn't really want her family knowing about it, like porn stuff. So Jeff helped Cat with her websites and pages. He supported her, and she got plastic surgery. He supported her with that. Eventually, they set up a fans-only account where fans could see lewd photos for free, but for $15.99 a month, you got to see more. So they also had the ability to, the fans had the ability to talk to Cat, which, according to Jeff, did not make him jealous. He was a supporter, and he took her photographs even. He supported his wife. He said, quote, "There's nothing to be jealous about. Me and her were in a good spot. Just pictures she got money for." Although Jeff seemed to be extremely supportive, some texts showed friction in the marriage, which is totally normal. Most couples have some conflict. It seemed at times Cat was a little unsure, sending texts like, "You don't want me. Fine. Someone will." Jeff would respond, "I'll always win." But other than the occasional Cat being unsure and Jeff being reassuring, their relationship seemed solid, with Jeff responding to photos sent by Cat with "looking good, sexy mama." West did say his wife was very sexual and he wasn't as sexual, but he also said that Cat was bi. She was looking into maybe bringing another woman into the relationship. She was kind of seeing what that lifestyle would entail. So to me, it seems like they were communicating issues, trying to fix them, right? That's kind of how it sounds. So on January 12th of 2018, Jeff and Kat were getting ready for a night out. Their parents were going to keep their daughter all weekend, so they went out to eat. They had drinks and a good night out. On their trip home, they stopped at two different places: the local liquor store, R&R Liquor and Wine, and at the liquor store, they picked up Lucid Absinthe for Kat and Jameson whiskey for Jeff, and then they stopped at the local grocery store after for some energy drink. But you can see in clips at the liquor store that they were being flirty and they seemed to be having a good night. Then they went home. While at home, they continued drinking. They both had around 6 drinks each. Jeff is then photoing Kat, and they are creating content for her websites. At some point though, Kat is spending a lot of time on her phone and an argument ensues. Jeff is said to have walked over, took Kat's phone, and then just opened the front door and chucked it out the front door. Then Jeff just goes to bed. So that is about 10:30 p.m. At this time, when Jeff is heading up the stairs to go to bed, Kat runs out the front door to get her phone. As she runs out the front door, she leaves the front door open behind her, and then she is looking for her phone. After Kat exits the front door that night, we are unsure of the exact movements of Kat or Jeff, But at 5 a.m. the next morning, a neighbor from down the road, a 19-year-old girl, gets in her car to drive to work. As she drives by Jeff and Kat's house, she sees a body, only wearing underwear, face down, on the other side of the road. The 19-year-old neighbor turns around and goes and gets her parents, and her mom calls 911. The body in the street is Kat. Her body was so cold it was almost frozen. Originally, police thought Kat had had an accident while drunk and maybe fell and hit her head. Who knows, but upon further investigating, investigators began to notice some things that made them very suspicious. The way Kat's body was, she was halfway in the street, her bottom half in the grass, and her head in the street in a pool of blood. There was her phone with a bottle of absinthe on top of the phone, and two investigators, the way the bottle was laying on top of the phone seemed strange, and it looked purposefully placed. Strangely, as I said before, Kat was found in a pool of blood, but across the street was another pool of blood, as if Kat had been moved. So that made police definitely second guess the accident theory. The bottle was collected and taken for evidence. It did have dried blood on the bottom of it, and it also was missing a sliver of glass. Jeff's fingerprints were also all over the bottle. So Kat's autopsy came back, and her blood alcohol level was 3 times the limit, the coroner said. Also, Kat was 5'2", and the coroner thought that it was very unlikely that the injuries sustained were caused by a fall. They believed the bottle was the same size as the wound on her head. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Kat had a 2-inch gash on the left side of her head and a fractured skull. So obviously, police bring in Jeff because he is the significant other and the only person at the home. Jeff seemed to be complying. He went in and he spoke with police for around 6 hours. He told them about the evening, dinner, drinking, even the fight. He said he went to bed around 10:30, didn't wake up until the next when he heard his dogs, which woke him because they were barking, because there were police outside. So at that point, he notices Kat is missing and starts searching the house. When he realizes Kat is not in the house, then Jeff goes outside and clearly finds out his wife, the mother of his daughter, is dead. So, get this. The person that found Kat's body said that Jeff was pacing back and forth inside the home while she was speaking 911, which was suspicious. So Jeff was just acting strange. Police said calm but creepy demeanor. He came out and he didn't walk out. He stood there on the porch smoking. And then finally, police walked up and told him his wife was dead, which was strange to them. Jeff didn't have questions, nothing. He was just calm. They searched him for wounds. There were some, but they didn't know for sure if they were new or not. Police then think maybe a fan may have become a violent stalker, so they go through the couple's phones where they find text messages suggesting that Kat was the aggressive one in the relationship. She would pick fights with Jeff, but Jeff was always super calm. So on the phones, the police find something very interesting. On the couple's phones, they had a health app on the couple's phones tracked steps. Jeff's story was getting ready to start to show some cracks. So you see, these apps showed Kat's movements. She traveled around 200 feet at 10:45 to 10:54 p.m. on January 12th. And that was her last known, that was the last tracked movements on the app. But Jeff, his movements tracked 10 steps at 10:17 and 18 steps at 11:03 p.m. to 11:10 p.m. But also on January 13th, it showed him taking 59 steps between 5:12 and 5:22 a.m. Coincidentally, this coincides with what the neighbor that called 911 said, which is interesting. But was that Jeff pacing? There is argumentative text, suspicious stories from Jeff, the blunt force trauma possibly caused by that absinthe bottle with the Jeff prints on it, but it was his left hand, not his right hand. He's very interesting, but it also coincides with Jeff looking around the house for Kat. Investigators put Jeff as number 1, and he does look suspicious. What do you think? I mean, a lot of it is circumstantial, but it is a bit suspicious. Thursday, February 22nd, 2018, police arrest Jeff and charge him with Kat's murder. Jeff's bond was set at $500,000. At his hearing after not guilty, Jeff told the same story at the trial he did at the original interview. Date night, drinks at home. Kat was on her phone too much and it upset him. It turned into an argument. He threw the phone out the door and went to bed. He thought maybe Kat went out to get her phone and possibly fell and hit her head and died. He said the pacing was him looking for Kat. The prosecutor thought Jeff snuck behind Kat as she was retrieving her phone and hit her in the head with the absinthe bottle though, but Jeff's lawyers said all evidence was circumstantial. So, as they hadn't found brain tissue or hair on the bottle, there was no evidence of the bottle on Kat's head, and the chip that was missing was never located, or Jeff's prints were on there. It could have been because of him picking up the bottle out of the bag. At some point, Jeff was offered an Alfred plea right before the trial. This plea would have offered him to get out of jail immediately on time served, and then he would have only had 2 years probation, but he refused to admit that he murdered his wife, even if he would have got to see his daughter. He wanted to go to trial. He insisted he was innocent. So because Jeff didn't react and cry when confronted with his wife's death, prosecutors thought that was strange, but he was a veteran, so maybe he had been trained to be emotionless in front of others. But his mother-in-law, Kat's own mother, testified she had seen Jeff break down. So he was sad, but he only showed it around family. Maybe that's just the case. They also said Jeff's prints, like I said, were upside down on the bottle, like he held it upside down. His team argued that he bought the bottle and he could have taken it out of the bag and grabbed it in any direction, including upside down. He also showed Kat had an injury to her toe that suggested she could have stubbed it, like maybe she stubbed her toe and ended up falling. That is interesting. Another thing I want to bring up is, even though Kat had the fans only account with thousands of subs and fans, etc., police had only spent 3 weeks looking into the thousands of subs and ultimately just settled on Jeff and just zeroed in on him. They did not even really look for stalking suspects. But another strange thing is Jeff and Kat had ADT, the home alarm. This tracked when the doors to the house opened and closed. So the front door to the house opened at 10:53 p.m. It closed 10 seconds later. It opened again at 1:51 a.m. and was left open for 2.5 hours and then closed again. So this doesn't add up to Jeff's tracker because he was in bed, but again, circumstantial. He could have left his phone. Maybe he wasn't carrying it, so maybe it didn't track it. The prosecution believed Jeff had bottled rage because of the porn and fans only accounts that he exploded, took her phone, threw it out the door, and when Kat went to get it, he followed her with the bottle in hand and hit her and killed her. At some point, defense called Kat's mother, and she testified Jeff was a great guy. She testified to Kat's alcoholism, and she drank a lot. She was naturally clumsy. She was even clumsier drunk. She went out barefoot and danced all over. They found her dancing on an electrical box one time. She was just always half naked, and she was outgoing. So her being in her underwear when found wasn't strange for Kat. They'd find her passed out on trampolines. This was not irregular for Kat. So, eventually, the prosecution ends up changing the murder charge to a lesser charge of reckless manslaughter. The jury was sent into deliberation. The jury found Jeff West guilty on November 20th of 2020 of reckless manslaughter in his wife's death. Shockingly, and also possibly unshockingly, Jeff was completely emotionless as the verdict was read. Even though Jeff was charged, many things still to me don't add up. His prints were on the bottle, his left hand. He was right-handed. If he was going to bash her with the bottle, don't you think he would have hit her with his right hand? And also, her own mother supported him. So did his parents, but her own mother said she is clumsy. She said it's not strange for her to have been half naked. The saddest part, though, to me, is that their daughter. She was 12 when she lost her mother, and her dad won't be out until she is 28, maybe a little earlier. But she lost both of her parents. She's being raised by all 4 of her grandparents, who I hope see that she lives her best life. So who knows? It is strange because the evidence is very circumstantial, and a fall is a very good possibility. There wasn't any life insurance. All couples argue there was no evidence of an affair or money issues. Maybe it was a fall, and she did hit her head. And he was a vet and maybe grieved alone, which is even sadder. And if he didn't, their daughter has lost both of their parents in a very tragic situation. But I would love to know your thoughts. Do you think Jeff is guilty, or did Kat fall? Or maybe it was a stalker and that has just been the door was open at weird times. I find that strange. I don't know. But that's why I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comments below. I need opinions. What are your thoughts? Don't forget to sub, like, and share if you want to. And I always love topic suggestions. So check for a Google Doc in the description. Thanks again for joining me today. And I will see you guys next week.